Chapter 2. Days earlier. "Yusuf, where are you going?" his mother called from the other room. "Have you said your prayers?" "No, Mamma," he called back, and without further prodding he returned to his room. His brother Omar had already laid out his prayer mat, facing east toward Mecca. He was more faithful in his obligations, and was his father's favorite son. Yusuf took his mat and unrolled it next to his brother's. Omar didn't say anything, but his head was held high, eyes closed, and his body was positioned perfectly. Yusuf sighed and slumped his shoulders. He would never measure up to his brother, to his father, or to Allah. All he could hope for was that his feeble attempts at faithfulness would pay off. "You should be mindful, Yusuf, of what the Holy Quran says. Be ever mindful of prayers, and of praying in the most excellent way, and stand before Allah in devout obedience." "I will if you will," Yusuf snipped. "Your tutor has taught you well, as has mine. It is not time that the hearts of all who have attained to faith should feel humble at the remembrance of Allah, and of the truth that has been bestowed on them from on high." It was bad enough that his mother kept reminding him of his duty. Yusuf did not need his self-righteous brother doing the same. Omar rolled up his mat and placed it carefully in the closet before answering his brother's sarcasm. "I warn you for your own good. Be faithful in your obligations, and the mercy of Allah will rest on you. Otherwise, you will face His judgment." He walked out the door before Yusuf could say another word. Omar was right, of course. He was always right, but Yusuf would never give him the satisfaction of knowing it. After finishing his prayers, Yusuf flew down the stairs, raced past his mother, and left the house before anyone could assign him chores. The only thing he had on his mind was playing football with his friends. "You're late," Basar yelled. "That is good for you. It will be the only time you can score a goal." Yusuf was one of the better goalies. His dream was to play on the national team, but he didn't know if his father would give him permission. "Who's that?" He pointed to a tall, lanky boy playing a forward position. "He is going to be your worst nightmare." Ibrahim brought him as their secret weapon. "Come on, I will introduce you to him." Speaking in English, he said, "Carl, this is Yusuf. He is our best goalie." "Hi, they told me you're difficult to score on," Carl said. But Yusuf did not comprehend and just shook his head while shaking Carl's outstretched hand. "Why did Abraham bring this kafar to our field?" Yusuf used the derogatory term for non-believer and was a little surprised. He never considered himself intolerant of non-Muslims, but in this moment his prejudice seeped through. "Yusuf, I'm surprised you even care. He is only here to play football." "I know. Sorry." Yusuf felt his face turn red. "Let's just play." Ibrahim's team led off, and right away Carl was fed the ball. His footwork was impressive. As Carl moved along the right sideline, two defensive players moved in to force a pass. Carl pushed through both defendants and was met by a third, but not before he kicked the ball toward the upright corner of the goal. Yusuf, anticipating the angle, flew through the air and pushed the ball over the goal and out of bounds. Carl positioned himself for a corner kick that curved to the inside and set up his teammates for what should have been an easy head ball and goal. Yusuf would not allow a score. At the last second, he ran, jumped in the air, and let his momentum carry him to the ball. Just before his opponent could knock it in for a score, Yusuf snatched it out of the air. A collective groan came from Ibrahim's team as Yusuf once again denied them points. In the end, Basar's team held on to a 3-0 win. Yusuf reveled in his friend's accolades and wished his father could be as proud. He was determined not to let those thoughts ruin that day's victory. "Nice game." Carl was holding out his hand. Awkwardly, Yusuf shook it and answered in broken English, "Thank you. You played good." Carl nodded and then turned and walked away. "Ibrahim," Yusuf yelled, "where did you find that kid?" Afraid of some competition? His family just moved here. His dad works for one of the oil companies. He goes to my school, and when he told the class he played soccer, that's what Americans call football, I invited him to play. Yusuf's countenance changed. That won't be a problem for you, will it? I would hate to see your skills go unchallenged. I'm not worried about any competition. And he did not finish his sentence. Never mind. Same time tomorrow? Depends on what you mean. You were late. Ibrahim smiled and ran toward home, dribbling his ball between the buildings while Yusuf tried to catch up. The afternoon's fierce competition between himself and Carl stirred something inside of Yusuf. For some reason, he felt that the game epitomized the struggle between his faith and Christianity. His struggle was not with Carl. Yusuf saw his own faith as inferior to his brother's and found himself wondering if his faith was even true at all. He wanted to talk to Basar, but expressing doubt was not acceptable. They walked in silence until Basar couldn't take it any longer. Are you still mad at Ibrahim for bringing Carl? Basar asked. What? No. Carl's a good football player, Yusuf answered. Then why the sad face? We won. Basar pushed Yusuf's shoulder. He did not want to lose faith with his friend, but Yusuf decided to cast off his fear. He and Basar had been friends since childhood and were closer than he was with his own brother. Do you always pray? What does that have to do with football? Basar furrowed his forehead. I ran out of the house today and almost forgot to pray. It isn't that important to me. Do you always pray? Not always, I suppose, but most of the time. Silence would have been better. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person, he added. That's not the point. Why don't you always pray 5 times a day? We're supposed to. Your brother. Is this what this is all about? Your brother thinks he's better than everyone else, but he doesn't know everything, and maybe he does. He always prays, goes to mosque, and never hesitates to give to the poor. Just the other day, he was talking about going on Hajj. He keeps reminding me what the Quran says. When we gather them together against the day about which there is no doubt, and each soul will be paid out just what he has earned, without injustice. Yusuf's shoulders sagged. I worry that all I will find is Allah's judgment. Basar stopped and put his hand on his friend's shoulder and recited, Whoever submits his whole self to Allah and is a doer of good, he will get his reward with his Lord. On such shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. The verse was one of the only ones he remembered. He hoped it would give Yusuf some solace. Basar added, Do what is right and you will have peace. Don't listen to Ammar. He cares only about looking good before others. You might be right, Yusuf mused. I know I'm right. I have to go. See you tomorrow. Don't be late. Basar turned down a side street and sped off for home.